Something changed in the food supply in the second half of the 20th century, and the change did not announce itself. It arrived quietly in the bread aisle. Bloating after eating bread, energy crashes an hour after a meal, blood sugar readings your doctor is monitoring more carefully every year. Gut discomfort so common, most people have stopped questioning it and started assuming it is simply how their body works. It is not how your body works. It is how industrial bread works on your body. And the difference between the two begins with a grain that fed human civilization for 12,000 years before the modern food industry decided it was commercially inconvenient. That grain is einkorn, and what replaced it is what the food industry has no commercial interest in explaining to you. What you are about to watch has a paper trail, names, dates, documented decisions. Subscribe now so when someone tells you this is a conspiracy theory, you can tell them exactly which university published the study and which year the decision was made. In 1991, hikers discovered a frozen corpse in the Italian Alps, 5,000 years old. Scientists analyzed the stomach contents. Inside, they found einkorn, not modern wheat, not processed grain, einkorn. The same grain documented in Neolithic storage pits, Roman-era food records, and charred bread remains from medieval archaeological sites across Europe. For thousands of years, this grain was a dietary foundation across multiple civilizations. It grew on poor soils. It resisted disease. It required no chemical fertilizer, no pesticide treatment, no genetic modification. And it fermented slowly, 12 to 14 hours minimum. During those hours, wild yeast and bacteria broke down the starches, modified the proteins, and began a digestive process before the bread ever reached an oven. Lactic and acetic acids slowed starch digestion. Sugar entered the bloodstream gradually. The longer fermentation also performed proteolysis, bread breakdown, where natural microbes broke down gluten, making it significantly more digestible for the human gut. The bread that came out of a medieval stone oven was not simply food. It was partially pre-digested, nutrient-dense nourishment that the human body could absorb without the resistance that modern bread consistently produces. That is what was lost, and the decision to lose it was made deliberately.
Einkorn survived for thousands of years because it was built for resilience, not for factory efficiency. Its hull resisted mechanical processing. It yielded less per acre than modern wheat varieties. Its slow fermentation requirement made it incompatible with industrial production timelines. In the 1960s and 1970s, during a period now called the Green Revolution, governments, scientists, and agricultural corporations systematically replaced most traditional wheat varieties with high-yield strains engineered for volume and speed. Einkorn was evaluated, found commercially inadequate, and removed from large-scale agricultural production. Not because it stopped nourishing people, because it could not generate the output and profit margins the industrial food system required. The grain was not lost accidentally. It was replaced by design. This is the moment in this video where this channel asks you to subscribe, because what you are watching is the pattern this channel exists to document, one removed food at a time. A nutritionally significant grain declared commercially inconvenient, replaced with something faster and more profitable. Subscribe now so you are present when the next one is uncovered. But replacing the grain was only the first part. The second part happened in 1961. British food scientists developed the Chorleywood bread process, a method to produce a fully risen loaf in 3 hours. Where traditional fermentation took 12 to 14 hours, the Chorleywood process used intense mechanical mixing, chemical dough conditioners, and fast-acting commercial yeast to compress that biological timeline dramatically. This process became widely adopted across the British baking industry and influenced industrial baking methods internationally in the decades that followed. The production efficiency went up. The biological integrity of the bread went down. Here is specifically what the accelerated process eliminated. The slow fermentation that reduced anti-nutrients, gone. The proteolysis that broke down gluten into more digestible components, gone. The gradual starch digestion that produced a measured blood sugar response, gone. What remained was a loaf that looked like bread, rose like bread, and smelled like bread, but delivered to the human digestive system something significantly different from what traditional fermentation had always produced. Rapidly digested starch, less broken down gluten, chemical emulsifiers, artificial preservatives. And because the industry recognized the structural weakness of the accelerated product, they compensated. They added dough conditioners. They increased total gluten content to force weaker flour to behave like stronger flour. They added emulsifiers and preservatives to replicate the shelf life and texture that traditional grain and thyme had always produced naturally. The result was bread that required more chemical intervention to approximate the qualities that traditional grain and thyme had delivered for free.
Now here is where the argument becomes personal. In the decades following the widespread adoption of industrial bread production, researchers began documenting a pattern. Diagnoses of celiac disease rose. Reports of digestive discomfort following bread consumption increased significantly across populations that had historically eaten bread without reported issues. Blood sugar disorders became increasingly prevalent in food environments where rapidly digested refined carbohydrates had become dietary staples. The scientific community continues to debate the precise causal relationships between these trends and specific changes in bread production. What is documented and specific is the timeline, and the timeline is difficult to dismiss. The Chorleywood process and the Green Revolution replacement of traditional wheat varieties occurred in the same decades that these digestive and metabolic conditions began their documented rise. Your body's response to bread is not an isolated personal quirk. It is a widespread pattern shared by a significant and growing portion of the population. And the food industry that contributed to that pattern did not respond by reconsidering the production decisions that may have caused it. It responded by developing new product categories to manage the symptoms those decisions produced. Gluten-free product lines, digestive supplement ranges, blood sugar management programs. Commercial solutions to conditions that may have been significantly less prevalent before the commercial decisions that preceded them.
Now here is where the story comes full circle. Einkorn did not disappear entirely. A small number of farmers across Europe continued cultivating it. When modern high-yield wheat varieties began showing increasing vulnerability to disease, and when the health consequences of industrial bread production became harder to ignore, scientists returned to traditional grain varieties to examine what had been left behind. Research confirmed specific nutritional advantages of einkorn over modern wheat. Higher concentrations of certain antioxidants and carotenoids, a gluten structure that preliminary research suggests may be less immunologically reactive than modern wheat gluten, though research in this area continues. Higher vitamin E content than several commonly compared wheat varieties.
What the research documented was not that einkorn is a miracle grain. It documented that specific nutritional properties were present in traditional grain, that large-scale replacement varieties did not replicate. Properties that slow fermentation activated. Properties that the Chorleywood process never allowed time to develop. And now, the same industrial food system that removed einkorn from mainstream agriculture 60 years ago sells it back to the populations whose ancestors ate it as an everyday staple. $9 a bag at Whole Foods. Marketed as a premium wellness product, a superfood discovery, a nutritional innovation. The grain has not changed. The science confirming its specific nutritional advantages has been available for decades. What changed is that the wellness market became profitable enough to justify reintroducing it at a price point that reflects the commercial opportunity rather than the historical accessibility. That is not a rediscovery. That is the same commercial logic that removed it, now applied in reverse. Here is the honest question this video ends with. Not the answer you would give to sound informed, the real one. You have likely noticed your body's response to bread, the heaviness afterward, the energy drop, the gut discomfort that you may have normalized because it happens so consistently that it no longer seems unusual. Your great-grandparents ate bread daily. The documented evidence suggests their bread was processed differently, fermented longer, made from grain varieties with a different biological profile. The question this channel wants you to sit with honestly is this: if the bread that caused no discomfort for most of human history now causes discomfort for a significant and growing portion of the population, and the primary change between then and now is the industrial production process, what exactly did the industry optimize for? Drop your honest answer in the comments section and let's have a real conversation. Because the gap between what bread was and what industrial bread has become is the gap this channel exists to document and share with you all. And your answer tells this channel how personally that gap has landed. This einkorn story is not an isolated case. Replace the grain, accelerate the process, substitute biology with chemistry, sell the result under the same name at the same price. Then, when the result produces documented consequences across a population, develop commercial solutions to manage each consequence individually. That pattern does not stop with einkorn. It applies to every food, every fermentation method, every nutritional tradition the modern industrial food system classified as inefficient and replaced with something that generated more volume at lower cost with higher margins. The documented evidence for each replacement exists. The timeline connecting each replacement to the conditions that followed exists. Subscribe now and turn on your notification bell before you move on, because this channel is not finished. There are foods that were removed from your table, processes that were replaced in your food supply, and nutritional traditions that were declared commercially obsolete, not because they stopped serving the people eating them, but because they could not be scaled into an industrial model. This channel documents them one at a time, with evidence, with the commercial paper trail, and with the specific questions the industries involved are most uncomfortable being asked at scale. Einkorn fed human civilization for thousands of years. The industry that replaced it understood its nutritional significance. It replaced it anyway. Now you know what was in that grain. If you found value in this video, ensure you share it within and outside your communities. We would appreciate it if you give us a thumbs up. That would mean a lot, and we greatly appreciate it. Thank you for watching this video till the very end. See you in our next episode. Stay tuned.